June 30th, 2020, 5 o'clock, Rules Confirmation and Public Elections Committee, special meeting to discuss BL 2020-147. First, I'll make a motion that pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order 16 regarding electronic meetings as extended by Executive Order 34, I make a motion that this committee meeting agenda constitutes essential business. The Metropolitan Council, that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. There's second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Aye.
We're on. All right. Councilmember Murphy, do you want to introduce your bill?
Thank you. You made me just realize that we didn't vote on that motion in my last committee. So, oops. My bad. All right, so I'm going to run through this PowerPoint quickly, and then I'll make sure to email it out to everybody. And again, I'm going to apologize if I screw up sending this, moving this around. It's my first time on WebEx with it. So basically, here we are with my lobbyist registration. Most of you know that I've been working on this for several years. I've sent it out over the years to several metro and state lobbyists that I am familiar with that represent a variety of groups, trying to get feedback, trying to metroize this, and then figured, second term, we've got to get moving. Now, the version I sent you yesterday, the highlighted parts that are new or rearranged from the code or new to the code are in gray. There are some underlining parts that we will be going through. There are some expected tweaks and minor amendments, but nothing too substantive but I will go over that in rules when it comes up again on the 21st. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So that worked. All right. So conveniently, I did not know this when I was working on it, but the clerk did ask for an audit of the clerk's office, the way that they do lobbyist registration and disclosure. And conveniently, it had a lot of things that we had been talking about, and I incorporated their findings and recommendations into the bill. So I'm not going to go through each of these slides in the interest of time. I'm going to send it to you. You also have a copy of the audit. I sent that to y'all yesterday as well. So basically it has a summary of how things currently go, and then their conclusions of what should be kind of reinforced or updated. And so that brings us to, like I said, all the three main audit recommendations are included in the proposed legislation. So the proposed legislation that we have before us does not change who is a lobbyist and who must register as a lobbyist. That has been a common misconception, and I have been working with interest groups to try to explain that. I've met with at this point starting to lose track, but most recently a lot of our design professionals around town, including AIA, including landscape architects, including the Association of Building Contractors. So key definitions that I think are important for us to, when you are looking at what is in this proposal, is the definition of lobby and lobbying and lobbyist, and what is not lobbying. Those are not changing. So those are the current definitions that are in the code. The only thing under lobby does not include the following communications. D and E were copied from the state, and those primarily relate to economic development deals and the such. But the spirit of it, I think, has been pretty much upheld in Metro already. So other key, very key definitions is influencing. So if you look at this definition of influencing, if you go to the second sentence, does not include the furnishing of information, statistics, studies, analysis requested by an official of the executive or legislative branch to such official, or giving testimony by the individual testifying at an official hearing conducted by officials of the legislative or executive branch. In the marked up bill that I sent y'all, it does have some language underlined, so that's going to be on maybe page 2 or so. But so when working with the architects, we tried to flesh out some things that would not be like to give them examples, because obviously an architect or a stormwater engineer, they're going to be providing us statistics and studies. That's not lobbying us, as long as they're sticking to those statistics and studies. So we tried to provide this information that says, for example, influencing does not include so on and so forth. When talking to our legal team in the council office, we're concerned that almost by trying to clarify it, because you can't write out every single instance, that it actually might make the situation worse, and trying and do the opposite. It might muddy the water. And so this is an area that it might be more helpful that there is an advisory opinion, or in the lobbyist handbook, it is more fleshed out. And that is how it is typically handled at the state, is those kind of nuances are provided in an advisory opinion or written out in a manual, because that is something, as just as this bill was written in 1991, they didn't have text messaging then. We now have text messaging. Things will change, and it's probably more appropriate to address that in policy rather than in the actual legislation. So let's talk about how many lobbyists will this legislation currently affect. So from 2016 to 2018, I've got those numbers there. And then I added in 2019 that I pulled from the clerk's office. And then as of this year, there's 82 registered lobbyists. The important part to notice, because I'm going to reference this later, is on average, how many lobbyists actually file their annual lobbying reports. So we can come back to this slide, or I'm happy to slide back to it if needed. Okay, so what's missing from our current code? What's missing from our current code, if you look at the highlighted, marked up version that I sent you, like day of the week, business day, Board of Ethical Conduct, executive action. Those are just some clarifying things. They are words that are in the legislation that I think are helpful to just have defined in the actual section that they are being referenced to, just in case they are referenced somewhere else and have a different legislative intent. So again, just running through this quickly, currently our Metro Code has no way to file a complaint on a lobbyist or elected official that has violated this section of the code. So not only is there really a way to file a complaint, there is not a way to adjudicate that complaint. And that is really the meat of this legislation and the bulk of what was added to the code. Again, I'm going to send this out to y'all, and if you have questions, please send them. I mean, we'll discuss today, but you can also, if not addressed, send them to Hannah and we'll get through them. So the next two slides basically summarized each little section of this code. As you can see, there are some things that I've added, some things that I've just clarified or further went through. I don't want to go through this line by line now. I think it'd probably be better to wait until you have questions about sections. So just wanted to have this here because I know not everybody could get on the call today. So again, will this create the need of more people to register for as lobbyists? Since the definition of lobbying and lobbyist are not changing, no, I do not believe that this requires more people to register. But I think this has made people think, am I a lobbyist? Should I be lobbying or should I be registering? And I think that's something that, as a side note, should we also, as council members, be considering, because we are often approached by people who should be registering as lobbyists, and we do not ask them if they are. The only small increase that I could see from people needing more people to register is the creation of a volunteer lobbyist, and that's somebody who is lobbying and does not get compensated in any way other than reimbursements, and that's in the code as well. That is marked up for you. So again, right now, if you don't have to register under our current law and you are not a lobbyist, then nothing's going to force you to be a lobbyist now. So I wanted to kind of run through, because there have been questions lately about what the clerk does and does not do. And so in fact, while I have added things that the audit suggested, and that the Board of Ethical Conduct asks for clarity or asks for. Those have been added, but when you look at it as a whole, some of the things that are currently on our clerk, such as creating a manual and guidelines and requesting advisory opinions, I've shifted that to the Board of Ethical Conduct, because I do think that while if it was an elected clerk or something, that might be one situation, but when we have clerks that might not be legal attorneys or that situation, that really it should be the appointed body, the Board of Ethical Conduct, that is kind of working through those situations. It is a very well represented board, and I think that they will do a great job in doing that. So again, trying to just move quickly so we can get to questions. Again, this kind of goes through some of the other tasks that are laid out by that the clerk currently is required to do and how we've changed that. Really what I've tried to do is make anything that is paper filing, I've tried to make that electronic, because that should mean less staff time, less staff hours and things like that. So hopefully just, reports can be pulled by a few clicks or strokes of the keyboard. So our current fiscal note shows that there are 240 registered lobbyists right now. I actually counted them up last night. We've gone up. We've made more money. So at the recommendation of the clerk, we have increased the fee from $50 to $100. When this started in 1991, it was $25. So a lobbyist would register per client, not per project. And this also, at the recommendation of the audit, would create a late fee if the lobbyist does not file their annual lobbying report. And so that's not currently reflected in our fiscal note, but just based on averages, based on the clerk's data of how many lobbyists turn in their reports, and since it is changing from one report per lobbyist to one report per client, I averaged that out to be 60 reports could be late per year, meaning possibly $3,000 in late fees. Again, that goes into the General Services Fund, but it overall helps with the implementation of any ITS issues or extra filing cabinets that are needed. So the Board of Ethical Conduct, when Hannah and I were looking at this and thinking, okay, who in Metro is the right place to adjudicate complaints like this? Hannah did a lot of work on it, and I appreciate that. The Board of Ethical Conduct already has policies and procedures in place. The most recent example that we are familiar with is last term with former Mayor Megan Barry. So a complaint was filed. They have the complaint process. They have the hearing procedures, all of that. They have what would be sent over to censure an elected official, so on and so forth. So they are the correct home for this type of adjudication of complaints. So I met with them on June 8th for 2 hours. I met with them, was that just yesterday, the 29th? I was only on the call for about an hour, but Hannah and John were on there for longer, and that they have had some suggestions and tweaks just to give them some more clarification about what, because this is expanding their scope and their authority. And so we will be making, those are the amendments I expect will be tweaked on this and filed for the 21st as one comprehensive amendment. So frequently asked questions, just wanted to run through these real quick. Is there a provision for the incidental or recognizing that incidental routine activities of design professionals are not lobbying? And again, that takes you back to the definition of influencing, where it specifically says influencing is not the furnishing of material, statistics, studies, and so forth, because that is quite often the role of the architect or the landscape engineer. Does the proposal ban all lobbyists from serving on Metro boards and commissions? No. This is language that I worked out with AIA, the landscape architects and the associated building professionals. And so we've kind of metroized that part of it. And so basically, if you are, say you're an architect and you work out of county or out of state and you never have anything come before the planning commission, then it's no problem. But if you're a registered lobbyist and you have a client and a project coming before the planning commission, then you should resign because it is a conflict of interest. But the example I gave is like a lobbyist for scooters is not very likely to have pending business in front of the Arts Commission. So therefore, lobbyists could still serve. We currently have lobbyists serving on boards that have nothing to do with their day job and their client. And I think that's fine. It's also not a lifetime ban, so they could be reappointed if they had to step down. Why is there a cooling off period? We all know that the relationships we build over the 4 years that we serve together, and sometimes 8 years that we serve together, can be very beneficial in a lot of ways. But that is not necessarily fair when you enter into the business world. And so it kind of levels the playing field to have a cooling off period of 1 year, 12 months. This is similar at the state and in a lot of other places for department heads, elected officials, mayors, members of the mayor's office. And that's spelled out a little bit more in detail in the actual legislation, just giving you some broad strokes. So again, you do register per client, not per project. So you could have a lobbyist could have a client that only has them lobby on one issue, or has them lobby on every single zoning bill that comes before us, or every easement. If somebody's obsessed with sewers, I don't know. But it is, you register once for that client, not per project. And then also to kind of take us down to number 4 on here, do you have to register that you're for or against a project? No. So like if Angie Henderson, Council Lady Henderson was my client, I would register as Council Lady Henderson's lobbyist, and that would be it. I would not be saying that I was lobbying for or against, polka dotted sneakers or something that she decided to oppose or what have you. So if somebody is just interacting with Metro staff for the purposes of clarifying or seeking interpretations, so that's number 2. Again, seeking information, calling Metro staff, calling codes to find out what is the building height in the UZO, because I frequently forget it. Again, that's not lobbying. That's just seeking information for your clients. So number 3, I think is more important for us as council members to pay attention to, as well as development teams. So sometimes development teams have multiple members. Who should register? And the answer is whoever is engaged in lobbying as defined in the Metro Code. So if there is an architect on there and all they do is provide you the technical information and they don't talk about anything else, then they're not influencing you with the purpose of trying to influence your vote, communicating with you for that purpose. So that would not be, it's not a catch-all that just because you're on a development team, you all have to register. It is the ones that are directly asking you to change a law. And I think that was one thing that really hit me when I was first elected, was when somebody asks us to change a zoning, we are actually changing the zoning code. And so it's important that we ask those questions. And I think that's my last one. So I tried to do that as quick as possible, and I'm open and ready for questions or whatever you want to do, Councilman Rosenberg.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, we'll open it up for questions on the bill. Council Member Cash.
Thanks, and I appreciate all the information Council Lady Murphy included in the PowerPoint. It was very helpful. We went through a lot of information really quickly, so you may have explained this perfectly well, but I kind of want to go back and make sure I understand it. So at one point it was, early on you said it does not change who is a lobbyist or who has to register as a lobbyist, and a little bit later you included something about am I a lobbyist, and like I guess what I want to ask is, as the discussion of this bill has taken place over the last several months, are there professions that have started to realize maybe I should be registering as a lobbyist and I haven't been?
That's an excellent question. I really realized over the last probably month and reflecting over the last 4 years is that I think some professions that at least I traditionally think of as being in one box and in one lane, they definitely have probably merged into other lanes and have merged beyond the basic explanation of technical information into lobbying for their client, whether they realize it or not. And so when someone calls us or meets with us or presents at our community meeting and is influencing with the purpose of trying to get our vote, that's where it kind of changes. So you don't have to, you can wear more than one hat in this profession. And I think, is it super easy to describe and draw the lines on? Not always, but and this legislation isn't meant to be a gotcha. But at the end of the day, the definition of lobbying, lobbyist influencing who registers and who doesn't, I'm not changing that. And if they should be registering today, they should be registering under my proposal as well. That's not changing.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple of professions in the design world and like landscape architects and architects. And you clarified some things that I think I understand. Do those groups, have you and those groups come to the same understanding of what the change is?
I've spoken with their lobbyists. We sat down and went through the legislation line by line. We're still kind of playing phone tag over this is what our council legal team, like that part about influencing. I felt good about it. They felt good about it. But in the legal world, I mean, we only play attorneys on TV, right? Or on WebEx. It's a little bit more murky. So I've reported back to the architects lobbyists, and I've spoken to them and the landscape architects lobbyist about that section, and that language where we tried to say it does not include makes it more murky. And again, I'm waiting to hear back from them. With AIA, it has been like chasing my tail a little bit to try to get them to respond back and things. So I'm doing the best that I can. That's why I kept it to the 21st, hoping that they'll get back to me. But they have felt comfortable with the boards and commission piece. Those were the two big parts that they had issue with. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Looking for hands. Councilmember Van Reef.
Hi there. I wrote a note down. You said that the $100 fee was at the recommendation of the clerk. That's new from last time I'd asked about where the fee came from. And I just wanted to verify that an analysis was done, that's going to be enough to process all of this new paperwork.
Sure. I actually went back and found the original red line version that the clerk gave us 3 years ago. And she had recommended that it bump up to 100 there. And it was also something that we had talked about internally. And so, yes, when you look at that, this is not creating the things in the audit are things that are either they just need to be tweaked or manuals formed and things like that. Also shifting some of the burden of creating manuals and advisory opinions and things off of the clerk and shifting that onto, this kind of sounds awful, shifting it onto our volunteer board of representatives. Again, that takes that off of her. And so, again, it does appear that right now, if we're generating 24,000, if we would be generating 24,000 and then potentially 3,000 in late fees, from discussing it with our financial office, and I can't speak for the mayor's office, but I've discussed this with them as well. I think that it would cover it.
Well, that's one of my concerns is that that we get a real fiscal evaluation of it, because it seems to me that I just want to make sure that our current clerk has had an analysis, because if it requires another part-time person, if it requires anything like that, that we're not fully evaluating the cost on it. So I want to just continue to ask you to make sure that we're not guessing, that we actually have done some analysis as to if this were to go into action, this is what we anticipate, and this can be handled by current staff, or it might not. That type of answer is what I'm looking for. Excuse me. The other question I had was just to ask you to expand a bit on the 12 months. You said that it expands a little bit in the actual legislation, but the 12 months would start at the beginning of. I'm trying to get some examples. If somewhere currently in the mayor's office were to be laid off, would they not be able to take a government affairs job in the private sector for 12 months?
Let me pull no, they would be able to take a government affairs job. They would not be able to register as a lobbyist. So let me pull up the cooling off period is 2.196.110. And so Part A is an elected official, department head, or employee of the mayor's office may not, within 12 months following the voluntary termination of office or employment or leaving elected office, obtain employment in which they will be able to take direct advantage, unavailable to others, of matters of which they were directly or indirectly involved during the term of office or during employment. And then section B is an elected official, department head, or employee of the mayor's office may not be a registered lobbyist within 12 months following the voluntary termination of office or employment or leaving elected office. And so, like, for example, say that I can pull, like I or you completely overhaul the codes department, and then we are or say there was a department of short-term rentals, and Council Lady Allen, I'll just pick on her. She's been kind of the person who's had her hand in all of that. And so Metro is hiring someone. She obviously would have an upper hand in that. Yes, it would benefit Metro to have that knowledge, but is that fair to everybody else involved to do that? Same with, is it fair that a staff member creates a whole new department, masters a whole new like ECD project, and then flips to the private sector to then lobby it? That would give an unfair advantage over the general public and our constituents.
Well, I think it might be an unfair advantage to have a degree from Harvard over Yale. I think that when people go into a line of work, they spend a lot of time trying to make sure that they have the skills to be able to continue that line of work. You're saying that all current council members at the end of their term could not do this work under this? Does that include the state? I mean, because I know that you're a state lobbyist. So
now, obviously, we can't regulate the state.
Yeah, but you're willing to regulate the city. But I'm bewildered by it, because what I'm hearing is that just having that in there means that we should all abstain, because we're directly affected by this legislation. So I'm wondering, even if you would consider, if you're going to go down that road, to consider making it something that is for the next council, because if you're running for Metro Council, you should know what these changes are whenever you make that career decision.
So I'm happy to listen to the will of the committee. The Excel spreadsheet I sent y'all with the other documents yesterday, I did have on there a tab of probably about 50 other examples of cooling off periods, including what we have at the state. So I'm happy to hear other opinions on it.
Thank you. Additional questions, Councilmember Van Rees?
No, I just, those are my two areas that I really need cleaned up in order to be able to feel like this is ready for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Withers?
Thank you, Chair Rosenberg, for recognizing me. I too have a little bit of concern about this one, not so much for myself as a council member, but I just really do think that we've had, in particular from the mayor's office, we've had some really outstanding individuals who served previous mayors in a lot of different roles, have lots of great expertise in their field as well as in how Metro government works. And I worry a little bit that we might be kind of selling ourselves short as a city to preclude those folks from engaging in that work. I think that all of us, particularly us as elected officials or mayors, when such a person comes before us, we kind of know who they are, and we would bear that with a grain of salt. But I just think that from when you look at like diversity and inclusion, when you look at transit, when you look at affordable housing, we have some outstanding folks who are career public servants who formerly worked in whichever mayor's office at what point in time. And I think that they should have an ability to work in that realm, to potentially persuade Metro government to take certain positions or not. That's just one that I really would encourage the sponsor to think about more, and maybe us to think about more. I'm glad we have a couple more weeks to think about that. But I think in particular for some of the folks who have worked in mayor's offices in the past that really do have a lot of expertise, and I would hate to sort of preclude them from engaging on these topics. So appreciate the sponsors' work on this so far, and maybe we can continue to think about that a little bit more over the next couple of weeks.
So Councilmember Withers, is you're concerned more about the part about employees of the mayor's office more than elected officials?
It is, yeah, because I think a lot of times folks in the mayor's office were an employee specifically. I mean, it's not like us where we kind of ran for an office. I mean, you know, they had to apply for a job in the mayor's office. But I just think that we've had a lot of really good employees who worked in those fields that just have a lot of expertise that I would hate to see excluded from the conversation.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Van Rees, is your hand up from before? Yep, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments, thoughts? Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Rosenberg. So I was going to speak in favor of the cooling off period because I don't think it precludes somebody from obtaining employment that would engage with the government, but, that particular influencing and lobbying function, right? So, I just think that while I do hear what Council Lady Van Rees is saying and Councilman Withers, and that's certainly garner expertise over time of, your subject area and how that kind of functions within Metro. I would encourage folks, and Council Lady, I have not looked at the comparison of cooling offs, but, I would say, rather than colleagues just dismissing that completely out of hand, maybe think about, the time frame that's on it, or, I do think if you just look at kind of that back and forth and the influence that those folks have, I think there is merit in the cooling off. And so, I hope we'll continue discussion on it, but I would support that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Murphy, do you want to speak on the cooling off anymore, or have you said your piece?
No, I feel pretty good about it. It's something that I've done a lot of research on this, and so I will say that I kind of breeze over some of these things because I have I've done a lot of reading on it, and so I am happy to compile some of those sources and share them beyond the spreadsheet that shows what other states and some other cities have. So I'll compile that and share that as well.
Great, thank you. All right, anybody else wish to be recognized on this bill as I try to scroll through? Okay. Any closing thoughts, Councilmember Murphy?
Yeah, I'm sorry I rushed y'all through the home occupation.
It's quite all right.
So,
we can get to our next meeting for the night a little bit quicker.
If anybody has any other questions as you read through this, please send them to Hannah, and I'm sure she can compile them for me, and I can either answer them or she can answer them and get them back out before our next meeting. So.
All right. Seeing nobody else with their fake hand raised, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.net.